Well, I think for me, I mean, tracing it up from the initial inception of what SADC was about, I would say it has been like modest kind of achievements, marred with a little bit of problems here and there. But one can say that, I mean, from transforming SADC from an idea or a vision of what SADC is about to basically institutionalizing what SADC has become, we can actually see notable successes here and there. However, perhaps maybe the question might be, has it given us some realizable kind of benefits? And that's another question, yes. Well, I mean, the obvious one are basically some of the political kind of imperatives. I mean, most nations not necessarily supporting, politically not supporting the regional kind of process. But more importantly as well, we have to also be very aware that capacity, either human capacity and also like resource capacity in the form of financial, has also been a little bit challenging for the institution. Well, like I say, you know, it's not a clear kind of answer to that, because I mean there has been a trajectory in terms of positive achievements, as I've already said, and also like a little bit of lacking here. I mean, coming up with instruments, coming up with policies that sets and gave direction to SADC's institutional kind of framework, there has been notable successes. I mean, you look at the organ, because this is my field, the organ on politics and defense. You know, there's been a lot that has been done in terms of trying to come up with scripts that will guide how SADC will behave. But perhaps in terms of implementation capacity of some of these policies or some of these instruments, SADC has been a little bit wanting in that particular kind of area. So one would say the policies or instruments, SADC has been successful in drafting them and in coming up with them. But however, when it comes to the practicality of seeing through such policies, it has been a little bit difficult.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the one which promotes or looks more at promoting trade, inter-country, inter-regional trade, is the most ideal. But for that to happen also, we need an institutional mechanism, the that model, which gives more voice to the business community and to civil society, so that once governments agree on specific issues to deal with, then we have the business community and the civil service pushing the governments really to go beyond signing. Because that's why at the moment we have really good intentions in terms of signing the protocol, but the actions after signing are lacking. And they are lacking because if the debt mechanism, the model we are having, doesn't give enough legal mandate for the private sector and the civil sector to push our governments to act on those signed protocols. In terms of going beyond signing the protocol, I think in ensuring that we have our infrastructure in working order, the railways, the roads, the ports, but also the border points to allow smooth transition, transit of goods and people is critical. But as we're talking about also integrating people, because integration is about people as well. I think one of the conditions that each government, each partner states to ensure that it creates the necessary conditions for the people to graduate from states of poverty to reasonable livelihood. Because when you have adverse poverty in countries, you have a risk of social cohesion. If there's no social cohesion, and then it acts as a brake actually for integrating people between countries. Some countries become more defensive, trying to shut out movement from countries which are in trouble, politically or socially trouble. Yeah, I think coming more with the political sort of statement to show some leadership, But if we talk country, we have two sides, so that you talk about government, but for me, let me talk about the private sector. I think the South African private sector has a role to ensure that as it invests, that it moves across the borders to invest in Zambia, in Tanzania, in Botswana. It also ensures that there's linkage of the investment with the domestic economies of those countries, so that the investment also creates jobs. Because one of the really pressing issues in our countries is jobs for our youth. And the current model where the South African business community invests in countries like Tanzania, if I take the case of Tanzania, without necessarily trying to link with the local economies where they bring all the goods from South Africa, it's not sustainable. They should open up business, open up retail shops like supermarkets like they've done in Dar es Salaam, but to ensure that at least there's a large proportion of their goods which are sourced internally in Tanzania. Therefore, you link with the domestic economy, promote jobs, etc.
Okay. Thank you very much.
SADC is actually set up by the states, isn't it? To a particular objective. The initial one basically was to circumvent influence of belligerent South Africa. Initially, I think eventually it was changed for economic cooperation or regional integration and so on. Without much of the urgency that existed during the apartheid time. The state basically dominated. As a result of that, it's very difficult for private sector institutions like ourselves to penetrate it meaningfully with the view of actually solving day-to-day problems that we face in terms of trade and other issues, pricing, economic issues which have characteristics of beggar thy neighbor disposition. And that's the issue. But coming from the private sector, we don't believe in the dominance of the government. In fact, we support less government and more private sector in the society. And more government institutions tend to stagnate and they take too long to transform. And we have to deal with things. We turn on a penny every day. So response time by institutions of that nature with regard to trade and economic development is too long for private sector development. Well, since these things have been dominated by government, we pay tax, right? There's one thing I can say, that we pay VAT. Economic development in the region and growth actually is translated into greater taxes, and therefore the governments that are part of this sort of thing gain something from us. But also, there is a gain between countries as we trade. Either we're buying things from South Africa or Botswana or from Zimbabwe or other places, or selling to those particular countries. There are benefits, to trade that don't exist if you don't trade as nations. No, in fact, this is the first one that I've been invited to myself. But then at the same time, there is, from the Lesotho Chamber of Commerce and Industry standpoint, the participation is at the SADC, Association of Chambers of Commerce. So we participate in that particular area in terms of designing different kinds of policy suggestions and things. But basically, that's really it. There's very little interaction between the private sector per se with SADC institutions. In the case of Lesotho, I'm sure there are those state national committees or something, but the interaction is very limited, if any at all.
Okay.